Hi, I'm Jon Land. I've published 27 books, the most recent of which is The 7 Sins, and I got to tell you, my first 26 books, well, I won't give myself that much criticism, but I started out my career by just blowing up a lot of stuff. Basically, I blew up everything. When in doubt, explode something. Have a bomb. I blew up the Alamo again. I blew up Washington, Disney World in the fires of midnight, Williamsburg in the Omicron Legion. But now, finally, now that I've passed the age of 50, now that I'm past 25 books, I think with my new one, The 7 Sins, I finally learned how to be a writer. I think I finally learned how to make people care about characters and how to create characters who aren't black and white, who aren't all good or all evil, but they're a little bit of gray. They're a lot gray, where you really don't know if they're if you would really want to meet them or if you would like them if you did. But you know there's someone you would respect, if not fear, and you would want this person on your side. The thing is, when I think about, when we talk about interesting characters, the names that come to mind are very seldom traditional heroes. We talk about Hannibal Lecter, a serial killer who eats his victims. Why do we root in the Hannibal Lecter books and the Hannibal Lecter movies? What makes us root for him? Now, I'm not saying that Michael Turano, the hero of my latest book, The 7 Sins, is Hannibal Lecter. He doesn't eat anybody. And he doesn't kill anyone, really. Well, you have to read the book to find out if that's true or not. But he's also not a particularly nice person. He's motivated by greed. He's motivated by power. And unlike heroes that you will see often in literature that have a natural arc where they change, where they evolve, Michael Turano doesn't evolve that much in The 7 Sins. He's pretty much the same person he was at the end of the book as he was at the beginning. The difference is he understands himself more. And I believe I've never been someone who called myself realistic. Robert Louis Stevenson wrote once that it doesn't matter to me if you believe what I'm writing is true. What matters to me is that you do not disbelieve it. I'm not saying to you today that The 7 Sins is a realistic book, but I think the sensibility of Michael Turano and the way he goes about leading his life and what motivates him makes him much more realistic and much more real and much more credible, and those are three different things. And I think because of that, any book that I write, or any book I feel that I read, what it all comes down to is getting the reader to turn the pages. How do we get to make it impossible not to keep reading? In fact, I have a test I do at book signings, and most of the book signings I do, nobody really shows up. I basically have to convince people to buy the book because I'm not famous enough that they're going to come in, and very few writers are, by the way, that I'm going to come to a bookstore and there's going to be a long line of people and all I have to do is stand there. The only time that ever happens to me is when we're giving the books away for free and they don't have to buy them. But if I'm trying to convince someone to buy my book, what I do is I say, look, I'll make a deal. Open the book to any page, any random page. Read it. If that page grabs you, if that page makes you wonder what's going to happen next and what happened before, that's a book you're going to enjoy. And I would recommend that not just with my books, but with any book. Because the mark of a good thriller especially, and that's what I write, the mark of a good thriller is something is happening on every page. There is conflict, there is pace, and there is tension on every page. And even though you won't understand it necessarily if you open it random, you'll know enough to be, whether you've been sucked into the plot and the story and embraced by the characters, and vice versa, do you embrace the characters or not? John D. MacDonald, one of the greatest writers of the modern era, who created the Travis McGee story, was very famous for being a writer who young people could come to his door, literally, and he lived in Longboat Key, just like his hero in Florida. They'd knock on his door, and sometimes they'd spend the entire afternoon out on his deck talking about writing. And one of these writers, whose name, by the way, was Stephen King, asked him, "What is story?" And he shrugged and said, "Things happening to people you care about." And I always come back to that with any scene I'm writing, with any chapter I'm writing, with any book I'm writing and ask myself, things happening to people you as the reader, me as the writer, care about. That's what a story is, and that's the contract a writer makes with his or her readers. When you buy my book, there's a kind of signature involved. I'm promising you a great time. I'm promising you that you're going to get more entertainment from one of my books like The Seven Sins than you are from the 2 movies you could see for the same price, whatever movies you could watch on cable that night, whatever is on the radio, your entertainment time and your entertainment dollar, how you're going to spend it. I'm making a pact with you if you buy my book that I'm going to do it better than anyone else can, and you're going to, not only are you going to love the book that you're going to buy of mine, you're going to want to buy the next one, and you're going to go back and get the other ones. That's the pact any writer makes with his or her readers. You're going to love what I write.